Guys, welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast, Health and Wellness Edition. Michael Lyons is with us, live from Australia, Singapore. Mike, where are you right now?
Singapore.
Singapore, amazing. Mike is a coach, founder at Recovery Systems as well. We're going to talk health, biohacking, triathlons. Mike is still pretty much in shape. He woke up at like 5 or 6. And he has gone 10 minutes on the biomat, had a cup of coffee, he's ready to go. Mike, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about you and your company.
Yeah, hey, thanks, and good morning, Charles. As mentioned, we're in Singapore. We're headquartered in Singapore, so quite strategically positioned in the middle of the world, right 1 degree above the equator. So we have very regular sunrise, sunset, and quite regular weather patterns. Takes a while to get used to the humidity, but I've been here 24 years, so I'm somewhat used to it, let's say. So you've caught me right at the beginning of my day, which is good for me. I'm a morning person. Had this have been 9 o'clock at night for me, that would have been a different story. But so a little bit of my background. Around about 30 years in tech and meditech prior to getting to where I am now. I've been around 50 years in endurance sports, and the last 15 years I've been coaching. I was an athlete coach while I was competing. I had a couple of injuries that prevented me from sort of going any further competitively, but that was okay. It was just a sign that I needed to pay attention to, that my body was saying enough of putting myself through the extremities of what exercise is. Because exercise is medicine, but what turns it into poison is the dose. So if we get that a little wrong, then we're heading down a path of injury or illness or both. So I needed to listen to that. For the last 8 years, Recovery Systems was born out of a long-term search for myself of things that would make a difference from a marginal gains point of view. So we looked at what was around in the market, and we thought, you know what, we think we can do it a little better. We think we can come up with a point of difference. So that was the beginning of our journey around 8 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Tell us about the titles that you won, the national titles that you won. Tell us about the distances that you did, the type of sports. I already know it's triathlon. I've been there, done that. I'm a multiple times Ironman, ultra runner as well. I'm at the very beginning of my career. I think I'll be accomplishing pretty extreme stuff. I have gone near the burnout line myself too, because I'm a founder as well. And I mean, I optimize for a bunch of things, right? And the least of them is like winning a title. But that means that, like I will eat one meal a day, which is really weird. That means that I will not follow my training regimen when I'm supposed to. So first, tell us about yourself. Now that we have a bit more background on myself, tell us about the titles you've won, the distances you did, and your background as a triathlete.
My triathlon, my background before triathlon was cycling, and I just a quick war story. I grew up in New Zealand, and our club scene in New Zealand, so people will know New Zealand for rugby, and by rite of passage, New Zealanders play rugby. So I played from about age 5 to about age 25 or thereabouts. So that's kind of like, as soon as you can walk, you're throwing a rugby ball around. The reality is New Zealanders are exposed to a lot of sports. So school it's really encouraged to play a lot of different sports. So I got involved in a lot of different things. I was very fortunate that our phys ed teacher at school was the national cross country champion, and he did something horrible to us. He made us run 3 cross countries a week. So his pedigree was, or his major influence was Arthur Lydiard. So Arthur Lydiard was voted coach of the century last century. by his peers, and he was highly influential for middle distance running. At a time at his peak in the early 1960s, Arthur's athletes were known as the Kenyans of the day, because they were winning middle distance gold medals at Rome and Tokyo Olympics. So there was a formula that Arthur had, which has subsequently been proven scientifically, of 87, 9, and 4. So 87% of your training for endurance athletes should be strength endurance based, sub-threshold, 9% at threshold, and 4% at VO2 max. So this proved to be a formula that I carried on in my life. I didn't completely understand it until I started coaching and also applying it to myself prior to that. But I noticed that I could take middle of the pack age group athletes and get them into world champs over a period of around 2 to 3 years by applying this formula. So that was pretty much my journey as I entered triathlon in my late 40s and early 50s. And around about that 3-year stage, as I described, I started to perform really well. Now, I'm a small rugby player. I hardly look like a skinny runner. But what I discovered was I'd always had really good power on the bike. And I discovered I could swim very well by virtue of the fact that I have a big upper body and skinny legs. And so I float like a cork in the water. So I have good buoyancy properties, and I discovered I could swim really well. So I was typically in races first, second, or third out of the water in my age group, and then first, second, or third on the bike, and first or second in transitions. So that's the fourth discipline in triathlon. It's often forgotten. And then I would be around sixth fastest on the run, with my sweet spot being Olympic distance, although I competed at Ironman 70.3 Worlds as well. But my sweet spot was really around that Olympic distance. And I think that's something to realize as athletes, and particularly people that are aspiring to triathlon. It's not a rite of passage, folks, that you start off at a sprint distance and then go to Olympic, then to 70.3, and then to Ironman or beyond if you're an ultra runner. There is a sweet spot for your body. And you may actually be overreaching if you're trying to do something that's not within that sweet spot. Yes, we're all trainable and so on to do different things, but there'll be a natural point that our bodies individually are designed to do. So I think that's reasonably important for people to understand. And I try to help my athletes that I coach to realize that, and to focus on things that are going to make sense with their lifestyle, because many of my athletes have work commitments, family commitments, including children. And so there's a whole combination of things in their life that they need to consider if they're putting themselves in the path of training that's going to take many hours. But it's not just the training, it's the recovery as well. So training for an Ironman, I think, takes a minimum, for example, of 18 hours a week to do it properly and to prepare your body properly for such a long race. So it's not just the hours spent training, it's also the length in the recovery process that will pay a toll on everything else in your life, including relationships. So quite important to balance that out. So I got to a point of being good enough to win a few national titles. So I won the Singapore national title and the Thailand national title in triathlon. Both of those were Olympic distance, and as mentioned, that's my sweet spot. I qualified for world champs at 70.3, had a very good race, had a PB, and I've also won a national title in cycling in time trial as well, in the discipline of time trial. So progression over time, but I realized that's the way my body was. I like time trialing. triathlon is all about pace judgment and fatigue mitigation, and allowing or implementing all the disciplines that surround training in order to make the whole thing make sense, including recovery, nutrition, timing of nutrition, and so on.
Are you still racing nowadays? Tell us about the transition from athlete to coach, and tell us about like how you're dealing with this psychologically.
So I decided not to pin a race number on again, and because I don't need to. I've got lots of dust catching medals and trophies sitting up in the cupboard, and really it's what I can do for others now. So I still chase power numbers on my bike, and I'm still very interested in the process, but that's mostly for my own sadistic goals. But I'm trying to train a little differently as I'm older. I'm 64 now. I'm prevented from running because I've had hip replacement. The only thing that prevents me from running, that doesn't prevent everyone from running. But my surgeon, when I asked him, can I start running again? He said, he picked up a Lamborghini catalog and he said, I think I'll have a white one next. And what he was saying was my other hip is in okay shape now, but if I poke the bear, I'm going to be back seeing him again, paying a bunch of money. So his illustration was well taken.
That's a good one. Love it.
Yeah, I don't want to provoke things, but I train a little differently now as I've gotten older. You see, the thing is with endurance sports, anything over an hour of training, you're cannibalizing muscle. You're going catabolic. And at my age, maintaining muscle mass is important. And it's important for the whole hormonal balance that makes up everything in our life. The endocrine system is quite important. Naturally, it's the governor of everything from muscle gains to maintaining a healthy hormonal balance, including not in the least of which is your whole mental health. So we've been through a lot with COVID, of course, with the whole isolation of that. And I did notice quite a decline in having to go through vaccines in order to travel. I did notice quite a decline on a number of my key markers from a training point of view that's taken a while to recover from. So all these things are part of life anyway. Because life stress is body stress. So we need to take that into account and learn to manage that and be kind to ourselves, particularly if there's a passion or a real drive to achieve at a sport as well as in life.
So you're also a race commentator. Any stories you can tell us, either involving yourself or some athletes that you coached, or just some legendary folks out there that you witnessed during a race, and or it can be before a race also?
Yeah, so most of my race commentary has been around cycling, although I have around triathlon as well. So with cycling, it's been shorter events like criterion street races. So it's very difficult to close roads in Singapore, for example, but we're lucky that we have some major bank sponsors to OCBC who have really promoted cycling. So we've had both local and international teams coming into Singapore for a weekend of racing. So that happens regularly. We also have the Tour de France Singapore. So in October, we have at the end of the pro racing season, there are a number of the Tour de France riders, like Jonas Vingegaard came last year, who was the Tour de France winner, for a couple of days of racing here in various formats, mostly criterion in nature because it makes really good viewing particularly given road closures. So really great to have folks like that. But I'll take you back some years to the beginning of my cycling days. And look, commentary's been real fun. I somehow have the wherewithal to call it in the moment. And an example of that was overseas a couple of times on the back of a motorbike, doing remote commentary at the sharp end of a race. So calling the action, calling the attacks as they happen. And it's very quite an exciting moment. What a great place to be, seeing that live and seeing winning moves happen and describing them, where there's been attacks and counter-attacks, and where somebody's chosen the right terrain to really put a big attack, and this would be, say, for example, a smaller rider attacking on a hill after he had worn everyone down with previous attacks to the point where they're just not going to chase anymore. So seeing and describing that process has been really good. But going back to the beginning of my cycling days, I was very lucky in that I had a cycling mentor who was a double Olympian, both speed skating and cycling, which are complementary sports. And he taught me a lot about race tactics and race psychology, and the psychology of bunch riding. And so we applied that and practiced that on many occasions in club races in New Zealand. Now, our club race scene, on any given Saturday, you'd have between 1 and 3 current Olympians turn up. So 45 seconds after the gun went, you'd stare down at your cycle computer and it would be screaming 60 kilometers an hour at you. And so you really knew you were in some pretty hard competition. But so it was sort of growing up and learning through that process was held me in good stead for where we are today. And also to look at, even with triathlon, there'll be times on the bike, for example, which is the longest leg of triathlon. There'll be times on the bike where it's really hard going and you don't know why. And it'll be the wind direction. You'll either be in a crosswind or a wind that's on a tangent, or a wind that is a headwind. So having that awareness of where the wind is very important, because you know that unless it's a long straight road, you know that you're going to be turning at some stage and the wind direction is going to change. So you just need to mentally apply that formula of, hey, it's tough now, but I can see there's a corner coming up in half a kilometer's time, and the wind direction is going to change. So I just need to tough my way through this moment and get to that point. Same thing applies in business, I reckon, is that we're currently in an economic downturn where we are, and a lot of our key markets are as well. So we know that good times never last that a long time, and we're hoping that economic downturn doesn't happen that long either. So the same kind of formula applies to look at the bigger picture and understand that the moment might be tough, but things will change.
Talking about that, recovery systems, you guys sell a bunch of recovery equipment, which is, obviously essential in winning the game. You have the Kaimat here, the PMF BioKaimat. You have I call it the leg compressor, which is one of the device that I had on my buying list. I obviously have the Terragun, which is essential. Tell us about the business. Tell us who you sell to. Is it only in Singapore? Is it international? Yeah, give us a bit more info.
Yeah, well, a couple of things that we do are, as you mentioned, on the compression side. So for compression and also biomat. So we have an energy medicine component of what we do. So why compression? It was our starting point. Why compression? Well, blood flow is key to recovery. Now, either through training load, genetics, age, DNA, accident, or illness, your circulation may not be optimal. So if you've overloaded with a lot of training, your body can't keep up. So what the compression does is squeezing from the foot up. We have different wraps or cuffs for different body parts. We have arms. We've got pants. We're one of the very few companies in the world that have pants, so that they go from the foot all the way up to the waist. We also have a number of points of difference in the power of our machines. We're one of the most powerful machines on the market for recovery modes, because your body interprets recovery differently based on pressure. We have the longest battery life, and also the ability to put 2 people on one machine. So our business, through business partnerships, went international fairly early in the piece. So we have had resellers in New Zealand, Australia, Vietnam, Hong Kong. We have around 80 affiliates around the world as well. So that business has kind of become international in a boutique sort of way. One of our most interesting customers was Rugby World Cup. We won the contract to supply 2 Rugby World Cups, so the third largest sporting tournament in the world, with football and the Olympics being the largest. I don't know which is larger than the other, but we won't debate that. We'll leave that to everyone to figure out. And so rugby is the third largest sporting tournament. So we won 2019 the Japan Rugby World Cup, and also the Women's Rugby World Cup last year. So that was kind of quite an amazing feat for us. However, a third of our business is healthy aging. So it's not necessarily professional athletes, it's healthy aging. So that could be people like you and I, Charles, who are at a different time of our lives, but we're still wanting to keep active. And we know that keeping on top of our recovery is key to us doing everything in our day that we need to do, including waking up early for me here, or your days where you're no doubt trying to cram a lot of different things in with what you're trying to achieve. So recovery optimization is key to that, not the least of which, naturally enough, is gains. So we found on the compression side that there were ancillary benefits to sleep. So we wondered why people were falling asleep in around 20 minutes on the boots. So we did a brain study with a brain scientist, and we discovered that there was a real calming of the alpha, delta, and theta brain state, which is a nice way of winding down and preparing the central nervous system to reset. So the central nervous system is key to recovery, because if that's in a calm state, then all the growth hormones are released, all the metabolic waste is removed, your body's working optimally. So we found that a lot of folks were having sleep benefits as well. We also did some studies using muscle oxygen sensors, and we discovered that 8 minutes on the boots is the same as 30 to 40 minutes of running. So you've just biohacked your warm-up by using boots, and it might be while you're having a coffee before you go out and train. So the metabolic cost of your training is a lot less, and it may well mean that you're hitting you haven't burnt any matches, if I use that term, and sorry about my accent, everyone, that's a New Zealand accent. You haven't burnt any matches before you actually get into your key session. So it means that quite possibly the quality of your training, you'll be able to hit your numbers on your 4th and 5th set if you're doing an interval block, for example, and the quality of your training will greatly improve. We've also, we work with teams like Singapore Swimming, Singapore Badminton, who are world ranked. And we also gave the athletes, when we were doing Zoom calls before Tokyo Olympics, for example, we gave them guidance to use the boots on a plane 15 minutes every hour in order to prevent swelling. So not many people realize that long haul flights, the SPO levels on an inside the cabin drop to around 94%. So normal atmosphere would be 98, 99% for most people. So they drop to 94%. And this means your body's starting to produce swelling. Some people far worse than others. We've got some of our professional athletes really suffer on flight. So using the boots on a plane is a highly effective way of mitigating that. So you can take our full length product onto a plane. It is battery powered, so you do need to carry it on anyway. So it can be used on a plane. We've just released recently a calf pump as well. Its product name's Atom. So that's, if you imagine the length of your calf muscle, it covers that. It's battery powered, and it's mimicking what the calf does for our body. The calf is our body's natural pump. So this is squeezing and releasing and giving you that benefit. Not quite the same benefit as a full-length cuff that covers your whole leg, but it's way better than, say, a compression sleeve in that it's pumping. Whereas a compression sleeve, if you're not moving, it's not doing anything but holding static pressure. So yeah, there's a few ideas there that that hopefully are useful for a lot of people. And the third aspect of our business is chronic pain and long-term illness. So aside from supplying Rugby World Cup, we've also saved some people from having their legs amputated. The number one disease in the world is diabetes and heart-related conditions as a result of that. So we've, in working with the vascular community here, we've been able to intervene in cases before they got too extreme to the point of gangrene and help revive the lower limb as a part of the management protocol for diabetes. It's not something that, of all the things we've done, I think that's the most significant from a life and wellness point of view. So we segued 4 years ago. We segued a little bit on the compression side, and we decided to build a version for horses. Now, horses are athletes with 4 legs, so no one had really successfully looked at compression for horses. And with horses, mostly their front legs, because they're 500-kilo animals that are landing primarily on the front leg. Horse leg and a human leg's a bit different in that they have hooves. The hoof expands on impact. However, they do have the same sort of recovery needs. That life cycle I mentioned of athlete, healthy aging, and management of chronic pain and long-term illness is part of a horse life cycle as well. So we launched in 2020, just in time for COVID. And having said that, the product's been successful, and we're working on a refresh of that product range. So finally, segueing into energy medicine, around 2 years ago, we launched our Biomat series. So we wanted to do things a little differently, and to the best of my knowledge, we're one of 2 companies in the world that have the combination of elements that are in our Biomat. So it's, the Biomat really combines the benefits of an infrared sauna, red light therapy, negative ion therapy, pulse electric magnetic frequency, and heat. So if you look at that combination, you'd normally need to go to 2 or 3 spas in order to get that combination of things. And our whole philosophy is it should be done at home wherever possible, because whatever is convenient is repeatable, and whatever gets repeated will make a difference. So subsequently, from our reviews, we found that we had a significant impact on people's sleep, and also joint inflammation, amongst other things, even skin disorders disappearing, and that's highly likely to be because of the red light therapy. And then reaching into brain-related treatment or management for things like autism, ASD, PTSD, trauma-related stuff has also been very successful.
Wow. The horse part is quite fascinating. A part of me is like, yeah, sell that to Dubai. That's a big market. I mean, they have the camels, but they also have horses, and that is a huge industry. If you can prove that the horse is recovering and running faster, and have them run, have them win more races, like that's a hell of an industry. What about the service side of things? Do you still like service people? Do you still coach people? What about that side of the
Yep.
business? Do you think of scaling it
Yeah.
also?
Yeah, I needed to scale it down a little bit, but I found that having a voice to coaches on recovery was very important. So maintaining elements of my coaching where I've continued to learn, and I've learned a lot of other coaches as well. I think first thing you ask a coach is who's coaching you, because if your coach's domain knowledge is 10 years ago and they're not upskilling constantly, then I think that can be a little bit of an issue. But so I see it as a journey of lifetime learning. So maintaining that's been very important, to have a voice to coaches. So from our social media point of view, with quite a strong following for Recovery Systems, around 53,000 followers. For my coaching sites, Coach Mike on the mic, and that has around 12,000 followers. So I use that as a voice and as messaging around all things recovery, not just what we do. So Charles, you mentioned you have a percussion gun. So great, me too. I've got a TerraGun as well. In fact, the TerraGun distributor here in Singapore was very interested in distributing our product. So we kind of did a trade, and from a business point of view, we started to help each other a bit. Now, the reality is they're complementary modalities. However, people need to understand with recovery, there's a correct frequency for treatment, and there's a right and a wrong time to use different modalities. Example, percussion gun. Would you use a percussion gun on your legs after you've done a marathon?
If the pain is unbearable, yes, but I would tend not to want to beat the meat more straight up after a run.
Yeah, exactly. So you already got trauma. So putting more trauma on trauma is not a good idea. The muscles get tighter, not looser. The correct time to use a percussion gun is when your muscles are recovered, because what you're doing is restorative. You're trying to lengthen the connective tissue at the insertion points so that the muscles return to their normal range of motion. Because most of what we do from an endurance point of view is repetitive and it's the same movement patterns. So I'm a big fan, by the way, of doing active recovery that is complementary or different to your main sport movement patterns. So if you're a runner, get in the pool or get on a bike, do something different, and allow the muscles to move in a different way. So that's a very important aspect. So a lot of the education process around correct frequency of things are very important. So ice is also greatly misunderstood. Primarily, ice is for trauma, and ice is there to control pain and internal bleeding. So behind me, there is an ice compression machine, and so that's primarily used for the in the rehab situation. So it could be post-surgery or post-trauma injury, and that would be highly appropriate. Now, so we see a lot these days, and by the way, so we supply collision sports like rugby, mixed martial arts, boxing, football, even though it's not supposed to be collision, but there's inevitably lower limb contact that creates issues. So icing there is quite appropriate. However, I find that a lot of folks are doing the training and then icing as a matter of as a part of their recovery routine. So first phase of recovery is inflammation. And inflammation then triggers a chain reaction of metabolic waste removal, growth hormones, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're icing after normal training, we actually can mitigate gains. And this has been talked about a lot. Now, there's a difference between ice and hot and cold therapy. So hot and cold therapy would be, say, water around, I'm going to use Celsius, sorry about that, 12 degrees Celsius or around 10, whereas ice would be around 5. They have a different response on the body. So moving from hot to cold can be really beneficial in a number of ways. One of which is autophagy, getting rid of dead cells from the body to make room for new growth. And also the whole metabolic waste removal can be enhanced through that sort of process, along with saunaing and so on. So this is why we built the biomat, by the way, because not everyone has the wherewithal to do all these things. So we wanted to complement what we were doing around circulation with the boots and then biomat.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, thank you for the class, because there's been a lot of points that me as an athlete, it got me to reconsider it. I think we need to do another round, because yeah, it's you have like the insights. It shows, you know, that you have a lot of wisdom that you accumulated as an athlete and a coach. And yeah, like I'd personally love to have you as my coach for some crazy ultra runs that I'm about to do, you know, and try new unconventional methods, because it would be like stuff that hasn't been tried before. It wouldn't be necessarily a competition. Last question. I mean, I see these YouTube videos every now and then, you know, like first I started, oh, Ironman is like the best, and then I saw double Ironman. I did this 80-kilometer run the other day. Then I see this guy doing a 250-mile run. When is enough, you know, and how do I deal with that psychologically as a CEO athlete?
Yeah. So we saw a lot of craziness happen during COVID, and it was mostly people trying to cope mentally with being locked down. So I saw, case in point, Singapore is an island. It's 80 by 60 kilometers. So that's 50 miles by about, 60? 50 by about 38 miles. And so 5 million people locked down here, nowhere to go. What did they do? They turned their normal 30-minute or 5K run into 10, and then 10 became 20, 20 became 50, 50 became 80, 80 became 24-hour run. Same with cycling. I did a ride for charity. It was 360K in a weekend. First day one was 200K, day two was 160. Let me tell you, we saw a lot of Singapore twice. Now that was the fundraiser for autism. So I very proudly looked at my Strava that day, and I saw the number 200 there. I saw that somebody else on that day did 350K. And so, to your point, exercise is medicine. Let me come back to that statement. What turns medicine into poison is the dose. What does dose mean? It's either intensity or duration. So you could say that you're putting yourself into your body into a very strange state where hormonally your body's going to throw a spanner in the works. That's a medical term. You're going to have an immune system breakdown or things of that nature. So I think respecting your body and respecting your sweet spot for distance is a real balancing act, because people are really driven, because the mind's a very powerful thing. Let me tell you, I broke my hip. I broke my hip because I had sufficient pain tolerance or stupidity to ignore unhealthy pain. I got to the point where I had severe arthritis on my femoral head and couldn't sleep at night because the pain was so bad. So this is an example of where it became a poisonous and toxic thing. So what we're doing next is we're building an AI app. It's a recovery app. So what we're going to do is take your training data. With your permission, you'll allow us to connect to your platform. Your platform could be Garmin, Strava, Polar, Chorus, Whoop, Aura, and so on. What we're going to do is look at your training and analyze it. And we're analyzing lots of different parameters. So intensity factor, duration, training stress score, HRV, heart rate data, climate, exercise type, because not all exercises are equal when it comes to the impact on the body. And we're putting it through an AI engine, and we're going to give you, at the end of that, a recommendation of what sort of recovery to be. Now, suffice to say, needless to say, a lot of it will be relating to what we do. However, there will be, over time, we will generically build out around that to create a real wellness base of knowledge on a whole lot of different things that you could also do to complement that. So we're generating tons of data when it comes to training, but a lot of people lack the ability or lack the knowledge to interpret what does that mean to me. So we're taking that next step now. That development is underway as we speak, we had a call with Garmin International, with the big device company Garmin, and they immediately asked us to apply for their technology awards in health and wellness for the year. Now, I don't know what's going to happen about that. That's not the reason why we're doing it. It would be nice though, but we're really wanting to take things to that next level and create a real community element around understanding recovery. So our timeline for this is we're underway now with the development. We're hoping to have it complete within the next 2 to 3 months. So if folks want to follow us on our Recovery Systems Instagram or our website, we'll be making announcements along the way. And that platform will be free for everyone to use, regardless of whether you use our products or not. It's free for everyone to use. So that's what we're hoping to do. And as far as drilling down on other elements of recovery, I'd love to have a round two with you, Charles, if you wanted, because I think this is a good discovery around. We've got a kind of an umbrella talk that we do called Training Myths, Methods, and Marginal Gains. So we're going to debunk a few myths. We're going to talk about methodologies and their frequency, and also try to help people make sense of simple things they can do without any tools whatsoever before you even get into perhaps doing some of the stuff that we and others do. But let's start with simple things first. And yeah, hopefully that's a topic that will resonate with a lot of busy folks out there.
So Michael Lyons with a Y on LinkedIn, and the website again, Mike?
Is Recovery Systems Sport. Recovery Systems Sport. And Instagram, my coach Mike on the mic, you probably see my name there, is my coaching persona, that guy that talks about all things recovery. And Recovery Systems is our other LinkedIn. If anyone wants to reach out with any questions, I personally answer all the DMs. I like having contact with anyone that comes to anyone that touches our business. I'm that guy that will respond. So if anyone reaches out, would be delighted to field any questions.
Love it, man.